Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are getting started, so we are going to give everyone just a second to sign on, but wanted to let you know that we are recording this session and we will email it out and post it on our Daxco Connection website later. We also have everyone muted to cut down on background noise, but if you have a question throughout the webinar anytime, please use the Q&A function to just send us that question or send us a chat, and we will get to answering those. We will have time at the end for questions, but if we don't get to your question, we will definitely follow back up with you. I am Allison Farrell, and I am so excited that you've joined us today. We are going to be talking about outsourcing some payment management. So part of our Recover Together series, looking at as we are thinking towards a reopening, thinking towards the future, and navigating our way through the COVID crisis, ways that we can leverage technology, leverage our team to help your team be more efficient and more effective at everything that you do. So I'm so excited to have this group of payments experts with us today. We have Matt Popinski, who's our SVP of Payments, Angela Masters, our Director of AAC Services, Colby Watkins, our Full Service Billing Lead, and then Trey Foster, who's our Sales Director of Payments. So a great group of experts today to walk us through outsourcing payment management and some ways that some data that we've seen, and also ways that we can leverage our expertise and our tools to help your team. So Matt, can you kick us off? I know that that there has been a lot of data that we've seen coming in kind of amid this crisis, but we also have a wealth of data from before everything with COVID hit. So can you kind of set the scene for us of some data that we've seen and kind of what our partners are looking at managing right now?
Yeah, thanks, Allison. Hello, everyone. I see some familiar names popping up on the attendee list. So hello, I just pray for health and wellness to you all, and thank you for spending the time with us today. And to answer your question, Allison, when the crisis first hit, we started zeroing in on key payments indicators, what trends look like, what the environment looked like, so that we could better prepare ourselves and then also share information with you all around what we're seeing across the board. So as we have done over the past 13, 14 years since I've been at Daxco and involved in the payments world here, we certainly have been monitoring, but we zeroed in on those things to surface those so that we can take action versus those. So the number one takeaway clearly is with the crisis and the unknown, with furloughs and layoffs and membership cancellations and membership freezes, there is clearly much more to manage now, even today, than there was pre-COVID. Say, let's back up to February. There's much more going on, many more things to consider in the payment space specifically. We've seen demands, just increase significantly across the board in terms of managing credit card return rates. And so we've seen credit card return rates increase March to April. So if you remember, a lot of the shutdowns happened in the middle of March. And so if we look at credit card return rates in March versus those in April, even with lower volumes, many of you froze all membership drafts or any kind of billing to members during that period of time. We saw those credit cards increase nonetheless by 2%. And what is 2%? 2% is several thousand credit card declines that happened over time in that brief period of time. And then further, Allison, we can keep on moving here. We saw that we saw credit card payments actually increased during the time. And so volumes decreased, the overall number of payments, but we saw a transition, right, from ACH's bank drafts to credit cards. So we saw credit card by volume percentage increase during the time. We saw NSFs declines during that brief period of time increase significantly, so about 11%. And we expect to see this continue as the world is transitioning off of paper checks and cash into more contactless types of payment methods. So I saw a recent study from one of our processing partners that they expect the card brands to do another round of reissues around cards. So if you all remember back in 2015, we had the transition from magnetic stripe to EMV chip cards with the liability shift. And we saw a significant number of reissues during that period of time for that type of technology. And the study that I've been provided here and that we're talking with our payments processing partners is around reissuing cards. Many of you have these with NFC, near field contact forms of payment. So it would have a chip embedded in it, and then also would be able to hover over a payments device to execute that agreement, that transaction. So we expect reissues to come. And so with reissues, we'll see obviously declines because card account numbers may change along the way. And then we've seen the number of terminations remain steady as the data over the past 15 years or so shows us that if a member experiences a card decline, they're more likely to terminate that membership in 30 days. So 1 out of 3 of those type of events happen. And that is held fast during this period of time. So the takeaway here is we've seen increased credit card payments. We expect to see an increase in card reissues. We expect to see memberships that have decline activity that 33% holds steady. So there is a lot to do in the payment space and the returns manager and Daxco operations with less resources. Now, we went a little further and started digging into something that I'm sure all of you have experienced. At least the data tells us this, and anecdotally, as I've talked to hundreds of clubs and gyms and YMCAs across the country during this period of time, we saw chargebacks increase significantly during April. In fact, 12.68 chargebacks per customer across the Daxco operations customer base during the period. Now, in March, we saw between 4 and 5 chargebacks per customer. Now we've seen that number increase 155% recently. And so what that means is staff need to check the mail, need to gather data and evidence around that chargeback, submit that chargeback back through the processing relationship, whether it's through Daxco Payment Services or another processing relationship. Could be fax, could be mail. But again, you guys, I'm telling you things that you guys know, those are labor intensive. They're also time sensitive. So not only do we have all the increased activity and transitions from ACH to credit card, declines increasing, we're seeing chargebacks, and that's a direct impact to revenue for you all. So the takeaway and the message from me here is that we are on it. We understand clearly that your time is extremely valuable. And that you're faced with challenges in the face of reduced staff and potentially bandwidth across your organization to manage these items that definitely need attention. They're critical to the success and the survival of businesses across the country, and YMCAs and JCCs and community centers and clubs and gyms are no different. And so I'm excited to have Colby and Trey and Angela here to share with us a service offering that we have coupled with Daxco Payment Services, and for customers that don't have Daxco Payment Services that can help put experts in expert areas and help mitigate revenue risk associated with these types of items. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Allison, and she'll navigate us down this path.
Thank you, Matt. Yeah, as you mentioned, so much on your plate, and especially as you're thinking through having to institute new safety procedures and new check-in procedures and new sanitizing and cleaning. I mean, there is so much to do as we're looking at reopening and looking at all the changes that COVID have made necessary to keep our communities safe. So one way we wanted to explore helping you reclaim your time and really get the most out of your day is leveraging the team and the tools that we have to manage some of those processes. So I'm going to turn it over to Colby and Angela and Trey to walk through some of those. So Colby, can you kick us off? What are some of the ways that we can help our community reclaim their time?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Allison. So as Matt had mentioned, there are a growing number of demands that are going to be, impacting Y staff during this reopening phase, and then, long-term down the road. We had actually developed Daxco full service billing a little more than a year and a half ago as a means of, finding identifying challenges in the Y space. A lot of Y staff team members pre-COVID were already, wearing lots of different hats, managing a number of different areas to maintain the operations of a, typical YMCA association and, serving their community. One area that we found that we could really assist in those efforts is decline recovery. So, during normal circumstances and times, decline recovery, contacting members, updating billing methods, reaching out, resolving decline balances and aging balances is already a time-consuming and very demanding part of the job. In that time, since we began the service, we've been able to reclaim over $1.6 million in just the last 12 months of the service, with resolving over 74% of those declines within the first 30 days from what we call the original decline event. And really what the service is really geared to do is to take that time-intensive part of running any health and wellness center to allow staff members to focus more on childcare registrations, fundraising, the growing demand of, keeping the facility clean and sanitary, making sure that, COVID guidelines that are going to be in place across different states are, being compliant with. So being able to focus on those items, not just having to spend the many hours every week and every month to reach out to resolve those declines. So that's a little bit of the backstory of why we developed this service and how we feel it, provides value to our partners across the country. The two main ways that we work to really resolve declines on behalf of our partners, one is through what we call strategic resubmission of declines. So what makes that strategic is really our internal data analysis to determine statistically every month which days are have the highest probability of a successful resubmission of a decline from earlier in the month. And then coupled with that, we also have what we call our inbound and outbound call and email campaigns, where we work to reach out to members on behalf of our partners to notify members of a recent decline and give them a number of opportunities to resolve that decline with them.
Yeah, and Colby, I'd like to add in real quick on that piece. Sorry, Allison, is you mentioned, coming back from this COVID, pandemic, recovering a little bit differently. I think one of the main takeaways here is everybody's going to be moving a lot of different directions coming back with, like Colby alluded to earlier. And this really allows a strategic focus and not just a call here, a phone, or an email there. This is more, focus. It's detailed reporting that would all come back to you guys, so you can drill down to what's happening.
Thanks, Trey. So if we'll go to the next slide, we can give a little bit more detail into how this works. The full service billing service is all works within app. It's conducted through Daxco operations. You have full visibility into the efforts that take place to resolve these declines with members. It is all conducted through our PCI compliant system, just as if someone at the Y were receiving a payment through operations. This is really works as an extension of your team and an effort on your behalf, just as if you have remote team members who are specifically focused every day to reach out to members and notify them of a decline. So we can move on to the next slide here.
Sorry, I would like to add just one other thing there. One of the differences here is Colby mentioned, is in operations, there is zero file sharing outside the system. So when you talk about security needing to be at the utmost, importance today more than ever, that's a huge, difference maker for our partners.
That's correct. Yeah. So this is all going to be taking place through operations. We will do a internal analysis based on historical information, geographic, comparative associations to a partner's size, to determine each month, which dates each month have the highest statistical probability of a successful resubmission. So we're not talking about just a next day resubmission or a weekly Friday resubmission. If the data tells us that June 6th has the data that tells us has the highest successful rate of a resubmission, then that's what we're going to follow up with. So it's really going to be a data-driven decision on when to reattempt a decline, and not simply just a 2-week cycle or weekly cycle or next day cycle. So it's much more data-driven, much more intelligent way of reattempting these declines.
Yeah, let me jump in on that one too, Colby. One thing that's really interesting about this is we had our data scientists and the team that's been working on Daxco operations, a lot of them that work on our performance analytics project, dig into this for us and develop this. And this is association specific. I think that's very important to note. This is not a global, every membership club or gym or crossing markets. This is specific to the particular YMCA or JCC or community center, digging in and saying, okay, the YMCA of Helena, Alabama, looking at historical transactions over the course of the past 15 to 20 years, or as long as I've been on Daxco operations. And like Trey and Colby both have said, this is zeroing in to surgically identify the best day to get the best success. So again, it is association specific based on the history in Daxco operations. Yeah.
Thanks, Matt.
Yep.
So in tandem with the resubmission services, there's also going to be an inbound and outbound call and email effort. And this is a team of folks at Daxco who reach out on your behalf to notify members of that recent decline and give them an opportunity to resolve that. This is fully cooperative with your own internal efforts. We work in coordination with your team. We check balances prior to any call or email, so you still have the ability to take a payment from a member without notifying us, emailing us, calling us, letting us know that that member has come in internally and resolved that decline. We'll identify that within operations on ourselves and essentially abandon efforts once we realize that the decline has been handled either internally, online, intervened with by some member of the staff. So it's fully coordinated with your team in real time. And it's all, like as Matt and Trey mentioned, it is all self-contained within operations, just as if you have remote team members working in coordination with your own team in-house. So with that, I'm going to let Angela chime in a little bit and tell us a little bit about that team that is working on your behalf.
Yeah, and hey,
thanks, Colby.
Sorry, Angela, before you jump into that, let me emphasize one thing that I think is really important. And Colby mentioned this, but I think the takeaway is the item and the member experience around items that are outstanding that need recovery remains 100% in control of the association, meaning the association can make a decision around Matt Popinski's $25 return fee. If I want to waive that from an association level, absolutely remains in the control of the YMCA, JCC, or community center. So sorry to interrupt there. I'll turn it over to Angela, but I thought that was important to share. Go ahead,
Thanks,
Angela.
Matt. So, like Colby was saying, we have a team of experts with over 30 years of experience. engaging with members, managing the accounts for the clients. They're focused, they're dedicated day in, day out of managing those member accounts. And they act as an extension of your association. So it's almost like a team member, a remote team member of yours working in Daxco Ops. They're familiar with your association even and how you want your memberships handled. We like to share this with a lot of associations that some develop a rapport with the members because they have a monthly decline that happens frequently, right? Everybody has that member in their facility that this happens with. So, another thing that we're really proud of from our team perspective is that we have a really great NPS score of an averaging 45, and it speaks to the success of the service, the positive interactions that we have with the team, that the team has with the members. So it's just a few little things that we wanted to share with everybody.
Yeah, and one thing I'd like to add there is it's consistency, right? You're not constantly having to train new team members or people who turn over and having to have these week, or 2 week or a month gap in process. This is seamless. This is continual. And another key benefit is if one of your members is on the phone with one of our team members resolving some kind of account issue, and they say, hey, also I want to inquire about swim lessons, or I want to talk about, childcare, whatever, we can directly connect that phone call back to someone at the association. So there's no lapse in time, or you guys aren't missing out on any valuable information.
All right. Oh, Allison, you're
Thank you. That is the third time that's happened today, as maybe some of you can relate if you've been on lots of meetings lately. But thank you, Matt, Angela, Colby, Trey, for walking us through that. There is time for questions. So if you have anything that has popped in your mind about Daxco full service billing, our team, any of the data trends that we're seeing that Matt led us through, please send us a chat or a Q&A, and we're happy to hop in and answer that. I wanted to quickly go through some other resources. If you've been on one of our webinars, this might be old hat to you right now, but we wanted to continue to highlight things that we hope are helpful for you as you navigate this crisis, and helpful as you think towards the future of what our another phrase you've probably heard other than sorry I was on mute is our new normal. So that's become quite something that we've had to think through and become quite the popular phrase here recently. But the first is just our resource page. So everything from webinar recordings to the podcast that we launched during this that has interviews with different nonprofit leaders, information on some of those data trends that we're seeing from our performance analytics system. It's all housed on daxco.com/COVID-19. So that is a kind of your one-stop shop for everything that Daxco has done resource-wise is there, including our playbook for reopening. So we wanted to, we interviewed and had discussions with lots of leaders from YMCAs, JCCs, other health and fitness, wellness facilities. And so we really wanted to put together a very comprehensive guide of standard operating procedures for how to reopen successfully, sustainably, and most of all, safely for communities. So this goes through everything from reducing the points of contact that your members would need to come in, need to actually, touch things, which we'll have more information about kind of in the coming weeks, more about how to completely reshape your customer's journey to be as touch-free as possible, and provide them with all the resources and the great service and the great connection you do with as little contact as possible. But also information just around check-in policies, check-in procedures. As Matt mentioned, as we have more information around the new types of payment reissues, so that payments are as contact-free as possible. We're putting everything kind of in this resource, and we'll definitely have more information and are continuing to update it as we get new information and new learnings and new things evolve. So that is available on our website, again, daxco.com/COVID-19. So now just, we're open for questions. So any questions you have around any of the resources we've shared, please pop in, and our team is ready and available to answer any of those questions.
Yeah, Allison, I'd like to actually take the moment to maybe ask the first question, kind of back to Colby, is more one of the more common questions we get through the process and talking to our partners is, this all sounds, fantastic. This is something that we want to do. What does the next step kind of look like, right? Do we just hand it over, or do we go through a process? And Colby, I'd like you to mention a little bit about what that kind of onboarding process looks like to carry on current procedures, what they're doing, and how we can carry out their standard operating procedures as they are today.
Yeah, thanks, Trey. So yeah, as I mentioned, when I say that this service works as an extension of your team, I truly mean this works as an extension of your team. We have a series of calls from kickoff to implementation to pre-launch check-in to discuss things like, what's your cancellation policy? Are there written notices? Would you like us to defer certain conversations around membership holds back to your facility, or is that something you would like us to handle on your behalf? Return fee policies. Do you have certain return fees that you'd like added for certain decline reasons? That's something that we can accommodate. Call cadence is, we typically default to 3 calls, 3 emails within the first 30 days. That averages out to about 1 call, 1 email per week, which we find is a good default cadence to start with. But if you want to have a more aggressive cadence or a less aggressive cadence, that's something we can certainly accommodate. So we really understand that, associations of certain sizes, of certain regions, for certain communities, not the same service is going to fit every association the same way. So we really try to fit that service as best we can to best accommodate your community, your member base, your staff, and your internal policies.
Again, Matt, I'd be interested in is there been any part of the data that we're seeing out of our situation right now that has been surprising to you, or anything that maybe that goes against sort of what you might have anticipated to see?
I don't see anything in the data that is a shock, but I do think it's a great opportunity to share that as we start to reopen, right, that we are we are focused on communicating with members about billing cycles, right? So if, let's say, for example, I've opened and I plan to open mid next week, or maybe even on Tuesday, Monday, whatever it may be, and then drafts will begin back for membership dues, say on June 1st, that the membership base clearly understands that's what's going to happen, so that chargebacks don't come back and spike again as we reopen. So I think it's really important that the lines of communication are wide open, that we're sharing that information with members, and so the experience is exceptional, white glove treatment as you all try to offer your members along the way. So it's key about information, openings, that the drafts are going to start, what date, what are the values and whatnot. And that will, in relation to what we've been talking about during this session, is reduce the number of items that filter into the returns manager that needs staff to manage them. So certainly it's an item that we need to have our eyes on to mitigate those types of the influx of volumes. And the other thing I'll mention, I'll take the opportunity, chargebacks clearly are a challenge for us across the board. Addressing this swiftly, right? Not letting them sit. And if there's any refunds that need to be executed for membership dues or something, or program registration or whatever that needs to be refunded, not to let those all sit and batch those up and do those all at once, to do those as soon as possible. Again, that will keep the returns manager clean. It will reduce some of the churn in the chargeback refund cycle. and overall reduce the amount of time that you guys need to spend managing those type of items.
So we got one question. So do you have to be a current Daxco Payment Services customer to leverage this service, or how, if you're interested in kind of getting started, how do you do so?
Yeah, I can take the first part of that, and then getting started, I'll let Trey take that part. You do not have to be a Daxco Payment Services customer right now to take advantage of this offering. We do see better results out of the Daxco Payment Services customer base, and the reason is with Daxco Payment Services, we have direct connections to the processing environment, and therefore we see granular detail on return reasons, status of transactions, etc. And therefore we're able to execute specific campaigns versus specific declines. If you're not on Daxco Payment Services, as you might expect, if you see in the returns manager, you'll see a large volume of generic declines or general declines, and those are issued through the gateway interactions. And so with Daxco Payment Services, those generic declines become more granular, meaning you might have a generic decline that comes in on a non-Daxco Payment Services instance. On Daxco Payment Services, we'll see exceeded limit or NSF, something to that effect. So Trey, you want to talk about how folks can get started if they're interested?
Yeah, I think the key takeaway there is it's a lot more strategic when payment services is involved. The work itself, the labor can still be performed, without payment services, obviously too. But to get started, we would simply put you in contact with your client executive here, whoever that may be, and we can set up an initial call, understand needs, what you guys are currently doing today, what you might like to see improved in the future. Any of that stuff can be discussed.
Yeah. Hey guys, there's a question that came in. I'll just ask it because I think you guys are closer to the detail on this. So do we have any examples of time saved over the course of having full service billing in place? Colby and Trey, do you guys recall any specific numbers?
I remember one of our specific partners kind of out in the Midwest, there was time spent or labor cut down of about 76% around this process. This association is around $30 million in line 33 revenue, so a very large operation. So when you think about saving 76% of time around this, that's huge. Being able to reallocate that resource to doing something more member engaging, bringing in new members as opposed to worried about the revenue that's already be coming in. That's what we're seeing, one of the bigger spots around impact.
Trey, do you know what that 76% decrease equates to maybe in the number of hours?
Yeah, I think it was about a savings of 19 to 20 hours a week of effort going into this process.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
And just thinking through everything, as we have new safety procedures and new, new check-in policies. I mean, that is so time consuming. Even to just, I don't know about you guys, but reading through recommendations and making sure you're staying on top of all the latest information from the CDC and the Department of Health, and all of that is so time consuming. So thinking through a service that takes tasks off your plate and cuts down the time that you are spending on other, kind of more manual, tedious things like this. That is that could be so necessary right now, of just making sure you've got the bandwidth to provide the safety and the service that you need to, so your community can continue to gain the benefit of coming to your facility and interacting with your great staff, and making sure those smiling faces are there, maybe behind a mask, but they're they're there to be there for your members and your community, and not back in an office or kind of at their computer dealing with hours and hours of chargebacks and returns and everything. So I think that's such an important point, that that a 76% decrease, or going from 20 hours a month on a task to just 6 hours is huge.
Yeah, and I will quickly mention, in a past life, I was the manager of an accounts receivable department of a very large food vendor before coming to Daxco, and a lot of if there's any folks in accounts receivable on the webinar today, they understand that as time moves on, a balance becomes exponentially harder to collect over time. So allowing these items to age over time, it only gets harder, it only gets more time intensive. Not having that focus and that persistent outreach effort to resolve these balances only becomes more time intensive to resolve over time. So full service billing aside, it's just sage wisdom to always keep a persistent effort in place with declines, because that time cost only becomes exponentially grows every week, every month.
And just a reminder, if you've got any other questions, or if you've got anything that you want to talk us to specifically hone in on, please feel free to send those through the chat or the Q&A.
Colby, kind of piggybacking off of what you said there around consistency, you want to have those processes in place. I think one of the main things we see, especially with our multi-facility Ys or Js or community centers, or they have multiple branches or offices, that it's not always a centralized or concentrated effort. So certain people or certain members of certain branches do things differently, and they don't necessarily do it the same way across the board. I think having that one team focus on it in a very calibrated and focused way has gone a long way to show improvement across the market too.
So guys, as I think we wrap up here, unless there are any other questions, as we consider reopening and plan that out, I think it's an important question to ask. Should we consider the economic benefits of outsourcing payments, recovery and resubmission and billing? The challenges that we all face with redirecting, as we've mentioned, resources to other things. It's an item that I think that deserves and warrants some close consideration. Looking at the data, again, we certainly have a reduction in staff and an increase in payments challenges. And so it's something that I think that we all should consider on the way.
Definitely. Thank you, Matt. And I just wanted to thank everyone for spending some time with us today. If you've got anything that pops in your mind afterwards, please feel free to email us. You can email us at marketing@daxco.com. And just a reminder, all of our COVID-focused resources, including this webinar, will be available on that page, daxco.com/COVID-19. We have another webinar next week. It's kind of a different topic, not payments focused, but it's leading through uncertainty. And we've sent out invitations to that, but we have several interesting experts who are joining us about how to navigate navigate this crisis and find ways to lead through uncertain situations. So that is Friday, May 29th at 11 a.m. Central Time, and we've sent out invitations to that, but I will make sure that in the follow-up to this email, when you get this recording, there is more information and a link to register for that in the follow-up to this one. But thank you for joining us, and we hope that you have a great rest of your day and a great weekend, and a great holiday weekend. But our thoughts and our wishes for a safe recovery, as always, are with you. So, and thank you to the team for joining me today.
Thanks, everyone.
Awesome.